Hey guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode for the Financial Freedom Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Liu. And as you know, I always talk about the four different types of freedom: time, financial, location, health freedom. And I'm always scouring the globe looking for individuals embodying those four types of freedoms, getting their insights and distinctions. How did they do what they do? Sharing those with you and inspiring you. So today I'm happy to welcome Lauren St. George, and you can see the founder of What's Next, helping you design your next life chapter with clarity and purpose. So today's going to be talking about, we've made it, now what? Meaning, and all of those types of insights. So Lauren, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I know you were coming from different parts of the continent, but tell people about your backstory, how you got started, and what you do.
Absolutely. Thank you. So, originally from South Africa, but have been in the US now longer than I was there. So, have a fondness for both countries. And, my journey's been varied, but I've landed in a place where I think it's been a culmination of my past and the skills and experiences that I've learned along the way. So, I'm a coach and a consultant by day, a mom the rest of the time. And I've found that the work that I've been doing on the consulting side, helping companies figure out what's next for them, that those methods and ways of working works just as well for individuals when they're facing that question of what's next for them. And so that's where What's Next came from, was putting together a program that could help people really think about what they want to do next, at whatever stage they are in their life.
That's interesting because I really like how you describe this what's next phase. But for a lot of people listening, it's very important because they've salary, they had the, car, spouse, car, house, kids,
Mhm.
etc. They have all that, but now what? So, you can call it a crisis, you can call it whatever, but what are five simple questions they must answer to transform their lives, take it to the next level?
Well, it starts with, where do I want to go? And for some people, that's easier than others. But I think you take stock of your life and you go, this is where I am now, and this is where I want to get to. And I think you need to do that across all dimensions of your life. So it's not just career, but it's relationships, it's your social life, it's your health, it's your mental wellness, it's the environment that you're living in. Is that living up to what you would need it to be? Not only are you in the right city, but do you have the people around you that you want around you? So take stock of your life from a 360 view, and you go, this is where I am now. Where would I like to be 3 years from now? Where would I like to be 5 years from now? And start to think about that. So that's a starting off place. Then you need to ask yourself why. Why on earth do I want to get there, right? Because to me, the why is the most important question to answer, because that's your motivation. And a lot of times people will give the sort of the first layer is like an onion. The first layer of the onion, they'll give that why. But I really believe that you need to peel back that onion and get to the heart of it. Which means being honest with yourself, because sometimes the why is something we don't necessarily want to tell the world, and you don't need to, but I think you need to know what that why is. And once you've got that, that becomes the motivation. It's the fuel in the tank. So now you know where you're headed, where you'd like to go to, what the destination is. You've got the fuel in the tank because you've got the why answered. Then you need to think about, what are some of the potential obstacles that are going to come in the way. What are the potential risks that are involved? What are the roadblocks that might hinder it? My family might not want to do that. My spouse might not think that's a great idea. There's going to be people along the way, and there's going to be other things that pop up, that get in the way. And so the fourth question is, how do I overcome those? And I always suggest that you take whatever those obstacles are and you kind of put them into three buckets. You have the gravel, the rocks, and the boulders. So the gravel is the easy stuff, right? That's the low hanging fruit. You can probably work through that pretty quickly. The rocks are going to take more time and effort, and the boulders are probably the things that you either have to just live with, or you've got to really figure a way around those. Some people like to start on solving the small stuff first, and others like to jump in and get one of the big things out of the way. So whatever your preference is, start to work through the big things or the things that you think are going to move the needle the most, getting you to where you want to get to. And then that final question is, how am I going to stay motivated? Because motivation is something that ebbs and flows, and it's, for a lot of people, they hit a roadblock and or a setback, it's not quite going the way you want, and you fall off or give up. So to me, motivation is the most vital, because you can have a plan of where you're going to, but if the motivation ebbs, are you going to stay the course?
It's interesting in those five questions, and I think it's really during periods such as 2008, 2020, which really people took stock of, why, what is their purpose, and it was interesting because you were talking about it, and I was like, yeah, well, because a lot of my colleagues, they're like, 500K plus, and they know deep down they should be doing something else, but they have to start over. Like, that 500K is very difficult to replace, and they have a house and wife and kids in private schools and all that. So, when people know that they have to change, but then they don't, and then finally this regret accumulates. But how do you what do they fear change? How do they overcome? How do they take that first step? How can they branch out into new directions?
It's a great question. Fear is an interesting thing, and I think I think for your audience in particular, many probably know this, but our brains are designed to keep us safe, and it means that when anything new or scary or threatening comes along, we hit fight or flight. And that's why even small changes sometimes can trigger that voice in your head. It's like, nah, that's probably not a good idea. Or I shouldn't do that. Or what are people going to think? Or whatever that little voice is that pops up. We all have it. Some of us have louder voices than others, but they're there. And that's your brain trying to keep you safe. It's much happier in its comfort zone. It doesn't like to break patterns. It wants to stay in sort of autopilot. And so it takes for many of my clients, it takes getting to that point of a tipping point of some sort. Some life event has happened. And in what you brought up, we've had a global event that has caused a lot of people to take stock of their life. And so to me, I think the important thing is you don't need to all of a sudden give up the job and take the kids out of school and jump straight into the next thing. I always believe in taking, considered risks, and to have the plan in place and kind of work yourself from one thing into the next. So, I always like to understand with my clients what their risk factor is, how much risk they're prepared to take on. And then we put the plan in place to get to that. So I think that helps with some of the fears. I think for other fears, it's about really understanding where that's coming from. Fear of failure can come from a myriad of places. We've certainly learned it in our education systems. Doctors have certainly learned it. You get something wrong the first time, and it can be dire. And so, to me, it's about talking about shifting mindset to more of an innovation mindset of trying something, iterating on it. If it doesn't work the first time, how can I do it differently, or what do I need to do next? And so for a lot of people, it's shifting to this place of being a little more playful, not being as stressed by taking a step, making the steps smaller so that they feel less risky, and having a plan in place so that when you start to take those steps, you know where you're headed.
Yeah, I always advocate just like do it where like you're if you fail, it's okay. So it's like you do it on the side. It's kind of like these side experiments, and then you grow, and then for example, let's say you work 5 days a week, then you work 4, and then the other day is like spent working on this side, and then eventually you can eventually take the leap. But then one thing is talking about I like to think of it in terms of your mindset and then your environment. And so we'll talk about mindset first, is this idea between the reptilian brain and the mammalian brain. And how do you, like, your mammalian brain is saying don't do this, but then your intuition and your instincts are saying, so how do you outsmart your neocortex?
I think first it's understanding that that's what's happening, right? For a lot of people, they don't know that that's kind of the way we're programmed. So I think, when you know that your brain is actually a tool and it can be used for whatever you want it to be used for, that's a simplified answer, because there are certainly different brains, and brains work differently for different people. But I think if you have an understanding of the way that the brain works, and you're looking out for that voice that's in your head that's saying this is not a good idea, all of those sorts of things, then we have options. We can certainly start doing things like practicing mindfulness to really ground ourselves in the present. We can do meditation. We can, to quieten out the voice. We can certainly do things like surround ourselves with the right support system, right? I think when we want to make a change, I think we have to be careful about who we share that idea with, because you don't want people to stop you before you even get started. So be very, to me, I think it's be very careful with who you share that with, and make sure that they're people who are going to support you in doing that. And then, if you don't have those people around you, then go find them. There's, if you're wanting to become an author, go join a writers group, because you're going to be surrounded by people that are doing something that you want to do, right? And so you're already putting yourself in an environment where you're going to be supported. So there's certainly ways to do that, so that you're aware of what your brain's doing. Oftentimes it's about coming up with the response to your brain, like, no, I know I can do it, or whatever that mantra is that you need to say to yourself. And the other part I think about mindset is also being really conscious about what you're putting into your brain. What are you reading? What are you listening to? What TV are you watching? All of those sorts of factors. What are you doing first thing in the morning? Are you picking up your phone and automatically looking at emails and social media? You have an opportunity to curate what goes into your brain, and the more positive stuff you put in, the better mindset you're going to have, the more you're going to be ready to take on what that challenge is, to take on making that change happen in your life. So I think there's a number of things you can do that don't take a lot of time of your day, but can really set you up for success when you consciously do them.
I love that. I had a guest on the show the other day, and he was saying, particular in reference to what you're talking about, is not having good support. And he's like, be conscious, aware of who is in the room with you, and be conscious of the different opinions. So that he's just saying these are opinions. So people may not support you, but that's their opinion. You don't have to, to each his own. Well, the other thing that you also made interesting, a lot of people, they know they want more, and so they start taking action. They say they say they want to be a keynote speaker or TED, they get a TEDx talk, and then they get on stage, and then they have this feeling of imposter syndrome. And tell the audience about imposter syndrome, what it is, how to manage it, and how it's natural for as we go through these transitions.
Certainly, I mean, imposter syndrome is really when you feel like you're a phony. Someone's going to find you out, that you're not supposed to be in the room, that maybe you're not qualified enough to be there. You're just waiting. You're waiting for someone to raise their hand and go, why are they on the stage? I think it's something that happens with people who have been successful in their life. We often don't acknowledge, the level that we've gotten to, or the skills that we have, and we're kind of waiting for the shoe to drop and someone to find us out. The truth is, you're there because you're good at what you do, and people know that. They wouldn't invite you onto a TEDx stage if they didn't believe that you had something worthwhile to say. So I think, one of the things is you got to remind yourself of what it's taken to get to where you are. And sometimes it's as easy as taking out a piece of paper and starting to write down, what actually are my strengths and skills. And I think once you see that list of things, it reminds you that you're not an imposter. You're there because you've put in the time, you've put in the effort, and you've gotten to where you are. And it does. You're right. It does, I think, pop up even more so when you're making a transition from one thing to another, especially if it's not just I'm changing jobs, but I'm changing careers. I've been doing this for a large part of my life, and now I'm over here. And so I think you need to then look at sort of the like adjacent skills. Like, these are the things that that were important in my past career, and they're important today, even in this career. And be mindful again that you're not there because people didn't see the value in what you do. It happens, and you're not alone in it by any means. I think there's a lot of people out there feeling the same way, but reminding yourself of your experience, the skills, your strengths, is a place to start. Again, I think being mindful of these things, catching yourself when you start to talk yourself down, those are all sorts of things that that you can have in your tool belt. That support system again is they're your cheerleaders. They're the people also that can help remind you of why you're having these opportunities, and why this change to whatever it is that your heart desires, and that dream of the next thing, why it makes sense. That support system can help in that as well.
As we get to the kind of the fun question to the end of the conversation, what are good practices to keep me motivated to reach a goal, and how can people contact you, follow you, and reach out to you?
Okay, let's start with the first question, the motivation piece, because that's one that I'm particularly passionate about. Again, we can sometimes get fired up to do something, something knocks us off course, and we leave it. And what motivates some people and keeps them on track versus others. There's a sort of, I think there needs to be an understanding that there's action and there's motivation, and sometimes you have to force yourself to do action in order to get motivated. So, for instance, it's easier to sit on the couch binge watching TV, eating potato chips sometimes than getting up and going to the gym. And so you have to force yourself to actually do that, right? You have to get off the couch and go do it. You feel great after you've done it the first time, helps you to do it the second time, and then the momentum starts up. So sometimes action has to come first. Other times motivation comes first. A lot easier if motivation's first, because that's the thing that's fueling you. So some of the things you can do. First thing, if you have to force yourself to do something, choose something that's going to take you less than 2 minutes to achieve it. So start small, so that you can actually get it right the first time. You can celebrate the win. As you're going, track your progress. Even if you step backwards, you will see that you're moving forwards, and that's the general direction you want to be headed in. And as you do that, make sure you do actually celebrate the wins that you're getting. Keep yourself motivated that way. The other is, as you're setting whatever that goal is, make sure that you're setting it as a positive. So there are avoidance goals and there are approach goals. So approach goals are when you actually frame it in a positive light versus a negative light. So, for instance, if it is I want to be healthy, an approach goal would be I want to eat healthier, more nourishing food. Versus avoidance goal would be I'm going to stop eating sugar and carbohydrate. There is definitely enough research that shows that an avoidance goal is something that's actually over time you're going to lose motivation. It's harder to stick to it. So if you can always frame your goal and what you're trying to get to in a positive light, you're already setting yourself up for more success. So those 2-minute first steps. Keep rewarding yourself along the way, having compassion for yourself if you slide backwards, realizing that one day you might have more energy to work on something than the next, that motivation is going to ebb and flow. Definitely ride the waves as they're going up. Be gentle with yourself when you're losing some momentum, and then fire yourself up again. Don't let it go too long between actions, but again, be compassionate with yourself. So that's some of the things along the way that I've learned about motivation. Now, in terms of finding me, my website is Answer, and through there you can schedule a call with me. You can sign up for my newsletter. I send that out weekly with lots of tools and tricks that you can use to find motivation, keep things going.
And for all the listeners out there, let's thank for this wonderful podcast episode. Very interesting. All of Lauren's resources will be in the links and show notes. She's on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Her website will be in the links. And with that, thanks so much for coming onto the podcast.
Thank you.